My name is Joe Woodham from Torii Consulting. Welcome to our blog series, All Things Design. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Medibank's Head of Digital, Peter Caddy. Peter has a rich history in design and a passion for customer experience strategy. He made his first move into design leadership at Lonely Planet. Since then, he has led teams at REA and most recently Medibank, where he's moved from head of user experience to head of digital. Welcome, Peter. How are you this morning?
And good, thank you.
Excellent. Peter, I'm actually really interested. I'd love to dig into, your career journey as a designer. So if you want to kick it off there, tell us a bit about your backstory.
Yeah, sure. I might start back when I was studying in high school. I always had a passion for technology and design and used to actually run IRC forums, which, if anyone's old enough to remember, was pre the period where everybody was online. It was sort of just the freaks and geeks in the dark corners of the world online chatting to each other. And I used to run a design forum in there. And then funnily enough, I ended up going to uni with a bunch of these people that I'd never met because I grew up in country Victoria, and this was the only way to really reach out to other like-minded people. And then from there, I studied design at Swinburne's National School of Design. Graduated and did a bit of freelance and agency work, so got exposed to the chop shop lifestyle and brand and marketing, and then moved to Lonely Planet, where I was lucky enough to be there during their heyday when publishing was at its height. And that was back when digital was rising up, and there was that big conflict between how is the internet going to change the world of publishing with news media and content publishers. And that was really fascinating because we got to see how an internal digital side of the business was rubbing up against the traditional publishing side of the business. And this was back when there was pre-iPhone, pre-iPad, so no smart devices. And at Lonely Planet, we were lucky enough to partner with Apple and do things like, be involved in the launch of the iPhone in Australia and have some of our material part of that launch and get exposed to some of those early technologies as they were emerging. And I was there for quite a while and worked from everything from marketing, advertising, print publishing, editorial design, mobile design, web and user experience. And then when the BBC took over Lonely Planet, they moved their operations to London, and a large part of that crew actually up and shifted to REA Group as a collective.
Yep,
so
I remember.
The family moved house. And in at REA Group, that was during their period of sort of the startup growing up. So they'd bought in-house a lot of their technology, had a lot of contractors, and were shifting from sort of functional ways of working to cross-functional, agile ways of working. And in at that stage, actually their mobile app team was sort of a splinter group. The commercial proposition of REA Group's listing model wasn't yet brought to mobile. And one of my first jobs was, how would you translate our web commercial model to mobile? How would that work? Which is a really interesting challenge. And I was lucky enough there to lead sort of the redesign of their flagship mobile apps for realestate.com.au, as well as their real commercial app, and work across redesign of their website, and then eventually lead the design team there as head of design and put in place sort of the overarching customer experience design vision to pull together the different lines of businesses that they operate. And then from there, I actually got involved in a side project completely unrelated, working with a retired fluid dynamics engineer to design a pitch for a medical competition of a world's first affordable kidney dialysis machine. So completely different hardware design, but it had a software and a product component to it. And I helped put together a pitch for that it actually won, which was pretty fantastic. It got published in the Lancet Medical Journal and things like that. But that made me think, geez, I'd really love to put my skills to use in the health space. And when I was researching the market, I ended up speaking to a group of leaders at Medibank, and they pitched me this problem that Medibank wants to become a healthcare company, and internally the digital team and particularly the design and product teams are still quite functional and more of an execution focused team. How would we turn them into more of a digital product strategy function? I thought that sounds like a really interesting challenge because in terms of execution, I felt like I'd honed my tools there. If you asked me to design anything, could wrangle a team and we could solve any problem. But then if you look at bringing that focus internally, how do you go into a place where the structure and that culture isn't there and actually build that? Who do you bring in? How do you create the culture? How do you set up a team? How do you evolve those ways of working and apply sort of design thinking to the company that you're working within? And that's sort of been my journey to here. I started doing that from leading the UX and design team there and setting up, a user research function and then a product design function and design ops and getting that up and running. And then that bled into, well, how do we do this for digital as a whole? During my time here so far, we've effectively done a ground up rebuild and brought in new technology leaders, product leaders, etc. And I've had the opportunity to move laterally from design to product, which if anyone's been in an industry or a role for a long time, I think I've been doing design for about 15 years. It's almost like an identity shift. Like you think of yourself as, I'm in a design role, but I am a designer. Like that's who I am. That's how I think. That's how I walk, I talk, everything. If I'm a product guy, what does that mean for who I am? And the way I thought about it is really, I saw a lot of design leaders, myself included, there in the company really advocating for change, saying, here's where we should go. This is what our vision should be. This is what our customers want. But ultimately, you're stuck at advocacy. You've always got to influence someone else to actually make the decision. You're not the decision maker, and you're not accountable for the benefits or the implications of those decisions commercially. And I took a leap of faith. Thought it's pretty rare that you get the opportunity to move laterally. So I just jumped in and I started looking after the digital product and analytics team alongside the design team. And I think I was only doing that for under a year. And I had the opportunity to do it for the whole digital team, not including the engineering side of things, but for product, agile delivery, BA practice, product management, UX and design. Again, huge amount that I didn't know, but I jumped in and threw myself at it and bought the same sort of sets of how you'd think about design problems, but just focus them internally on the team itself. So how do you build a team that isn't product, design, research as a group of functions, but how do you build a way of working that's, centered around design thinking and being close to the customer and just weave all that together? And that's led me to here.
Really cool. Look, I want to circle back quickly. Like I remember Lonely Planet back in the day, and they were the place to work. I feel like they were doing everything right before everyone else. Obviously, before you moved into REA. Let's talk through that really quickly. That was where you first moved into design leadership. Was it the culture there that they helped you take that journey? Like you were surrounded by some pretty incredible people.
I think that was one of my first gigs, and I had no idea whose company I was in really. I think during that period, the culture was fantastic. Everyone absolutely loved coming to work. It was hugely creative. Everyone who worked there had traveled all over the world and had amazing stories. A real sort of creative director presence in the design realm, which you don't have as much these days. I feel it's much more sort of interaction and customer research focused. But we'd spend weeks on end just doing photographic research and deciding how we want to put a book together. But the caliber of people there was outstanding. If you go and look at who was there and where they're at now, there's a lot of people in Apple and Silicon Valley companies and leading other companies, or they've gone out on their own and started companies. But I had no idea. I thought this is what work is like, because I didn't really have much to compare it to except working in a small agency at that time.
Yeah, and then going to REA, I remember when that happened. It was kind of like the dev community, because obviously Ruby on Rails was their main language, and then everyone got absorbed into REA. What did that feel like, going from one business to basically just taking all of the same, a lot of the same people into the next company and kind of building and taking that culture with you?
It was super fun. I think if you've ever worked with a group of people that you just have an unreal relationship with, where there's heaps of trust, you're both highly capable, the group of people are really capable, you can challenge each other. It almost doesn't matter what the context of the company is. You can make great things together, and to be able to do that and have that group of people at REA was fantastic. And that company attracts, a lot of ambitious, really sharp-witted, clever people who really vibe off each other, and you get to work on problems together, but you learn a tremendous amount when you're surrounded by high caliber people. And there's a real culture of there's always a better way, and constantly challenged to do things in a more innovative way. And that was a really interesting company to work in. I really loved it there.
Yeah. Oh, and I've heard very good stories about people just enjoying their time there. It always helps when you're surrounded by good people, definitely. Moving into leadership, I'm always big on sort of surrounding myself with, I guess, people that have been there and done that. What's one of the pieces of advice that you've been given that helped shape you as a leader in the early days?
Might be tricky to keep it to just one piece of advice, but I always love the saying that leadership is influence. It's a verb, not a noun. You're not a leader. You're either leading or you're not. And you can measure that by what's the amount of influence you're exerting on the people around you and the company you're in. So you might have a leadership position, you've got the title and you're there. But I always believe that I took the advice that it doesn't matter what role you're in, you can influence. And your ability to do that is really about one-on-one relationship building. It's not about being right. It's not about having a good idea. And I do see a lot of people that they're right. They've got a great idea. They say, here's how it should be. And they get tremendously frustrated in their role because they can't influence. And then they get even more frustrated because they know that they're right and they know the change they're advocating for is the right thing to do, but it never gets traction or it doesn't get adopted. And inevitably they blame someone else or they blame the company and get unhappy and go somewhere else. So the advice that I've always followed is leadership is influence. It's not a role. And to influence others, you have to invest a lot of time to build real, genuine one-to-one relationships. So you can't just meet a group of people and say, here's what I want to do. You've got to spend time with every individual and understand what's important to them. With the change that you're advocating for, what would it mean for them? And they need to know that you understand their perspective first before they're even going to be open to hearing a different way of doing things. So I think that a lot of people, try to lead by convincing or, coercing or here's what we should do and here's why this is a good idea, and they promote the idea or the thing that they're trying to push for. And it doesn't matter whether it's a design change on a site or it's a way of working or it's a funding decision. It ultimately comes back to the same set of problems, which is for the people that you're actually trying to create change with, do they genuinely trust you and believe where you want to take things? And do they have faith that you've got a good handle on what it means for them? And I've found that if you do that, that opens the door for you. And then it comes down to your ability to succinctly articulate the problem, visualize your thinking and tell the story in a way that people can see it through their lens. Don't just tell the story through your own lens because people might not see it the same way.
Is your role as a designer helped you, do you think, moving into a head of digital role?
I'd say yes. And I suppose I don't think of it as, this is just generally how I view people. I don't think of people as, you're a designer, you're a developer, you're a exec, you're a whatnot. That's the job title you hold, or that's the role in a company you hold. But people in general, and even outside of the digital industry, are wicked smart, hugely capable, and usually self-limit how they think. I think the moment you say you're a designer, you say, okay, well, I only need to think about these sets of problems and these sets of tools to solve problems. And you almost blinker off subconsciously considering about writing code or doing a business case. Oh, well, that's not what I do. That's what they do. And when you do that, you self-limit your own growth because you deliberately don't grow your own capability. So I think the great thing about design is it's a whole bunch of toolkits and frameworks for solving problems and for visualizing your thinking. And you typically apply that to problem solving from an interaction or user experience or customer experience perspective. But you can take the same set of problem solving toolkit and apply it to how would you redesign internally, how will your teams and systems work? You can take it to organizational problems like what's a better way to do reward and recognition and employee engagement. And the same methodologies work regardless of the context, which is why it's easy for a designer to up and shift from one industry to another, because the frameworks can be applied really flexibly. But not many people really, some do, but you can take that same, what would be more UX, UI or CX skill set and apply it to a business landscape, and it works just as well.
So what have you done over the years to help you remove those blinkers? Because obviously your career has continually grown into new areas and obviously making a transition from design into product. How have you removed your own blinkers in those situations to be able to open your mind up to a new skill set?
I'd say a love of learning. You have to be willing to put yourself in pretty uncomfortable positions. And you've got to be, I think the advice that I always give people is just do it and do it badly. And that's how you learn. So if you want to learn to cook something, have a crack, you'll get it wrong, cook it again, cook it again, cook it again. Eventually you'll start getting good at it. In business, obviously it's a bit harder to just give something a crack if there's funding and commercial and customer outcomes attached to it. But if you deliberately try to expose yourself to other people in the business or other roles or other facets outside of your core capabilities, just spend time with those people. First, understand what they do. How does that ultimately feed back into how the business runs and customer value? And then start to try your hand at it, even if it's basic. And you'll find that pretty quickly, if you broaden your skill set in the same way you can bring design thinking and design skill sets to other areas, you then start to bring marketing skill sets or financial skill sets to design problems. And then you become a bit of a weapon. You're a bit more like a Swiss Army knife. You're not the perfect blade for cutting through everything, but you've got a lot of tools at your disposal for solving a range of problems. And then you find which ones you have a natural fit with for your particular talents, and you can hone those ones.
Yep. Oh, good answer. My next question was probably more design specific, but given your role currently, it's probably what do you think makes a good hire? So I would have asked what makes a great designer, but what makes it a great digital hire or fit?
Yeah, sure. I'll give the answer. It always depends. But if you're looking to really, you've got a key role, it's a leadership role, and something that you need driven forward, obviously bringing in someone who's got that experience as number one, someone who's been there and done that. Because if you need someone to show others the way, there's that saying of you want the tour guide who's lived in Italy for 10 years to show you around Italy, not the travel agent who gives you the brochure and says, Italy, I've heard Italy's great. So you want to hire people with lived experience who've got the scars and the learnings, not the theoretical knowledge and the idea of how it could be. But if it's more in a sort of individual contributor role or any execution-based role, I always look for people that love learning, are passionate, they embrace change and they're change advocates, and people that are comfortable in ambiguity. Because if you're smart and you like to learn and you're comfortable in ambiguity and okay with change and failure, it really doesn't matter what sort of skill sets you're teaching that person, and their job and role might evolve over time and the person will be fine and they'll evolve and grow with it. Sometimes people aren't self-aware enough to know that they've got those qualities. So during an interview, you have to draw out and sometimes make people self-aware of, do they like change? Do they like growth? What are they passionate about? Not a lot of people know exactly in life or in their career where they want to be and what they want to do next. But if you go into what do you enjoy, what energizes you, what doesn't, people can usually answer those things pretty quickly. So I look for people that when they're in a role, I think less about these are your tasks, this is your job. And I see it more as, here's the position I'll put you in. You've got some core responsibilities that you have to take care of. That's your job. But in this role, you've got a lot of latitude for influence. So what things do you want to influence? What's important to you? What would you like to hone and get exposure to? And if you can put someone in that sort of a position, they know their job and their remit, and that's their performance side of things. But they also know where they've got latitude to influence beyond their role. And if you encourage that, you can build a team culture where the accountabilities are clear, but the responsibilities can be a bit more pool-based. It's okay to do a bit of your job or take on a bit of this. And that creates a really good environment for everyone's career growth. And ultimately, engagement, retention, and I'd like people who leave anyone from my team to feel like after my time there, I'm more rounded. I've had exposure to stuff. I got to learn and grow. I got to try my hand at things and that I wouldn't have otherwise in just a more of a discrete role.
I love that. Like, it's one of my highest values. So, how have you instilled that in, I guess, your team? So, bringing that as a culture, how have you helped Medibank really inspire people that join to really develop themselves as individuals?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's really tricky to communicate that outwards, because on the surface, if you're looking at what company to join, you only get that very cursory look at a LinkedIn post, job description, a bit of a pack or a video. You've got to go in and meet the people. So I try to make myself really available. If anyone's interested in any role, just pick up the phone, have a call. Not a sort of formal interview, but just get to know them as a person, what's important to them, what do they love doing, what are their values, where are they going, what do they want to do? Because if you are connected at that values and base level of where someone wants to go in their life, they're much more open to then the details of the role itself. If they look at just sort of the core responsibilities of a job and what's the difference between product designer or UX designer at company A versus company B, on the surface it's same. It's typically the who am I going to get connected to and the people I'm going to learn from around me that draw you to a job. So to bring that out in others, just try to make sure that you have a lot of deliberate time set aside for those sorts of conversations alongside all of the just work and execution-based conversations.
Really good. All right, my final question, it's been mindful of your time. What are the trends that you see emerging in design? Are you still very across what's happening in design, or are you probably more from a leadership overall perspective now?
Well, I think integration just overall is a bit of a trend that you're seeing. If you look at companies are becoming more holistic offerings. There's still lots of specialist companies, but a lot of like customer service companies, or it doesn't really matter what kind of company, that they're having to have a more integrated offering because customers are everywhere. They're multi-channel. They need to be met where their problems are. And I see that happening in skill set spaces as well. So you see a lot of design roles and design leadership roles becoming more like head of experience roles, because they're recognizing that if you've got a design leader and a product leader and a technology leader, well, how do you pull all of that together as customer experience? And I've seen that companies try to create sort of CX or UX or design as a group of people and say, you guys look after the experience, these guys look after the tech, or those guys look after the product, but someone's got to stitch all of that together. Because how you structure and how you fund, if that's fragmented, you'll see it in companies' products. It's evident. You click across their tabs and you can almost say, oh, that's a different team. And some companies have like a different product owner for every single part of their application and things like that. And you can start to see it in the experience. So I see a trend that companies are looking for more holistic leadership, and from a customer experience standpoint. And it's not really a design job. It's not really a strategy job. It's not really a product job. It's the ability to stitch all of that together. So I see that as a trend. And I think at the next layer down, it's similar in a design leadership space. You still have your specialist, bread and butter, grounded research roles and product design practice and craft roles. But I think to be able to shift into different parts of the business and solve different problems, design leaders are becoming more of a full-rounded set of skills. And then even at the individual designer level as well, the expectation is you should be able to do your own research, execute, prototype, talk about product strategy, jump back, get into the detail, then talk about design systems, not be hyper specialist unless you're in a really, really large scale organization. So I think that trend overall around cross-skilling, being well-rounded and being a more integrated contributor or leader is definitely a trend I see.
Yep. It's interesting. So obviously different companies handle it very differently. How does Medibank handle when you hire designers? Are you looking for, let's say, a product designer that does handle a bit of everything as opposed to siloing them into you do UX and you do UI?
Yeah, so we very deliberately made the decision that we want product design roles. So in the same way we would expect a product owner or a product manager to have a well-rounded set of skills across market research, finance, technology, UX, and business thinking, we should look for that in our engineers and our designers as well. So if you come and you're a wicked craft execution master, that's great, but there's going to be a huge amount in the team that you're not going to be able to actively influence and contribute to because you don't have that broader skill set. Even if people's skill sets, they're never all at the same level. Designers come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So we look to get a deliberate mix of experience and skill and then set up the team in a way where they can complement each other. So some people will love to do more research. Some people will love to do more mobile work or web work or systems work, etc. But so long as they've all got the capability that they could all run their own research, they could all be involved in product strategy and contributing in that fashion, then we just play to people's strengths and desires. So we don't expect the same thing from everyone. We'll deliberately involve certain designers in certain activities that play to their strengths and their aspirations, and people that are more, headphones on, let me execute and make everything tight. Great, we need that too. So we'll it's a little bit, horses for courses and organic.
Have you found that because they understand some of the areas of the other roles are able to work better together?
Theoretically, yes, but you need it in everybody. That's the thing with a team, is whether it's a sports team or a internal business team. If you have a couple of great players, that's good, but if the team isn't great, it doesn't really matter. The team will lose. So a lot of it's about always emphasizing we win or lose together.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if you're great and he's bad, the team loses. Or if you're both great but you're not playing together, the team loses.
Yep.
So treating the team as the team. So if they win, reward the team. Don't reward just the individual. I think that's another really important part that maybe gets missed a lot, because so much reward and recognition and career aspiration, everything is very individual focused. So it's like your job, here's what you'll get paid, here's how you're incentivized, here's your individual performance review, etc. But the success of the company, ultimately, it's shared.
I actually touched on this in a previous episode, and it was hiring rock stars and the implications of that on a team. So when you get people that work better together and aren't, I guess, competing against each other, it just works a lot better. And it's like a sports team, I guess.
I think a really valuable skill in any role and advice I'd always give people is, if there's something that you can see as a problem, don't assume everyone else can see it. And if you can articulate that, and then even better, if you can come up with a framework that sort of systematically addresses that, give it to people. I think some people will hold on and say, that's my skill set, that's what I'm good at, I need to protect it. And they'll deliberately not share their skills or their thinking with others. If you give all that away internally, so you might say, look, no one else should be doing design, I'm the design expert. These guys don't know what they're doing. You actually should do the opposite and say, we got to hell of a lot of problems to solve. Wouldn't it be great if everyone could contribute to design? How could I create a way to systematically do that? What kind of stuff could I give them as frameworks, templates? What kind of sessions could I run where I can get their thoughts? So even if the design's not great, they're inputting and they feel like they're involved. I'm going to build relationships. I'm going to get new ideas in. If you can facilitate that, you can, with a small team or even as an individual, you can effectively dramatically improve the impact you can have on a company, because you're creating a way for other people to see the world or see problems the way you see them by enabling them, instead of protecting what only you can see and how you can execute and then advocating or asking for what you want. I think that's a better path to creating, shared success.
Love it. Peter, I really appreciate your time this morning. It's been amazing speaking to you and finding out more about you and Medibank. So thank you very much. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way? Reaching out via LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn's good. I'm not the fastest because I get pinged quite a bit, but yeah, LinkedIn is good, and I'm always happy to have a chat, have a coffee with someone. I hope it's been useful to you viewers.
Very useful. Thank you. So thank you very much.